scene as dark as anything out of the Nixon White House. President Bush calling the hospital room of his ailing, barely articulate Attorney General John Ashcroft over the objections of Ashcroft's wife in order to pressure the Attorney General to reauthorize what is now known as the President's Surveillance Program. Our fourth story in the countdown, the legal implications, with constitutional law expert Jonathan Turley joining us in a moment. And we also know that after Mr. Ashcroft refused to reauthorize, the president and his then White House counsel Alberto Gonzales found a way around it, making it up as they went along. From today's report, quoting, on the morning of March 11, 2004, with the presidential authorization set to expire, President Bush signed a new authorization for the PSP, in a departure from the past practice of having the Attorney General certify the authorization as to form and legality. The March 11 authorization was certified by White House counsel Gonzales. Let's call in George Washington University law professor and constitutional law expert Jonathan Turley. John, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
All right, the president pressures his attorney general in his sickbed to certify, to reauthorize this PSP, and when the attorney general refuses, the president gets his White House counsel to do it instead. Just walk us through the sort of more obvious legal minefield points here in all of this sequence.
Well, it's a grotesque metaphor, isn't it? As you have this scene of presidential sycophants trying to get a man who's post-surgery to sign away civil liberties of American citizens. If anything captures what happened in the Bush administration, it's that scene. What it is important legally is that it shows to anybody in that administration that the legal basis for this program was never established, that they had to essentially change the authorization process to get the semblance of legality. So when people like my neighbor, General Michael Hayden, and others claimed that they had clear and obvious legal authority for all of this, they knew that wasn't true. They knew that they had to go to extraordinary measures. And in fact, very high-ranking, very conservative people in the Justice Department refused to sign on to this because it was blatantly unconstitutional.
Is there anything to be done about this legally now?
Well, there is. You see, the problem, Keith, is that the law has never been unclear. You know, the law is perfectly clear. There are so many crimes here that have been alleged and supported by facts in the last couple of years, it's almost hard to step around them. What is not clear is the intestinal fortitude of the Democratic Party to actually investigate. They like to disclose crimes because they have obvious political benefits. What they don't want to do is prosecute those crimes, and we now see why. Because the irony is that in the Beltway, as criminal evidence mounts, they become less inclined to prosecute because they know that if they start an investigation, it will lead them directly to the desk of George Bush, and no Democrat wants to indict him, and they know that if they start an investigation, it'll be hard to avoid an indictment.
The other bombshell, this unnamed White House official who padded the underlying threat assessment after 9/11, the one prepared by the CIA, and then quoted it back as an authorization for further intelligence gathering that skirted at best the law. Is there more in this than the mere manipulation of that one paragraph?
Well, it's a very serious thing. This is a very important document, and they're essentially cooking the books. In my view, they falsified the intelligence by having a political appointee outside of the CIA allegedly change that report and then rely upon that very section of the report. Now, that's a problem. The National Security Act of 1947, they have to fully inform Congress. Even covert operations have to be disclosed to a small number of members. We now know that there were surveillance programs never disclosed. We've already seen in the last couple of years false statements that have been shown were given to Congress, misleading statements. We know that evidence, for example, the torture program, was destroyed at the CIA with the full knowledge that they were trying to do this to prevent the evidence from ever being used. This is an incredible litany of crimes, and we're beginning to look like the countries that we despise, that have intelligence services that are above the law, that are untouchable. Well, the CIA now has the virtual criminal code checked off in terms of obstruction and in terms of torture and unlawful surveillance and false statements to Congress, and nobody's talking about prosecution.
And to even bring this up to date, today's developments have kind of buried this continuing saga about the Panetta admission, which addresses that last point about the CIA misleading the sources, the organizations that are supposed to oversight. The program he stopped, the House Intel Subcommittee Chair Jan Schakowsky says, you've got to investigate the clear probability of laws being broken here. If the program itself is not revealed, would we at least, if there's an investigation, get a concrete assessment of the degree to which the CIA has lied to the House, to the Senate, to you, me, to your neighbor, Mr. Hayden, anybody else we can think of?
Well, we should, because what we really need, Keith, is for our leaders to finally give up the ghost, stop preventing a criminal investigation, and hand this over to prosecutors. What the Congresswoman described is a crime, and she's correct. It is a mandatory subject for investigation. Lying, withholding information to Congress is a crime, and what they are withholding and concealing happens also to have been crimes.
Jonathan Turley of George Washington University, as always, our great thanks, best wishes, have a good weekend.
Thank you, Keith.